So I saw quite a few questions about my own backstory, my own history, as well as history in general. So most important question that I see people asking, what type of history am I into? So I'm a medievalist. So I focus on medieval history. That is my area of expertise. I am not going to tell you what specifically, because there may or may not be some research work with my name on that I don't want to be revealed. But yes, I focus specifically on European medieval history. Another question was, how did I get into history? So when I was younger, there were a lot of historical films that came out. So we had Gladiator, and I think 1999 or 2000 that came out. We had Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but I think that maybe predates me a little bit. We had a lot of cool media. We had books like Horrible Histories. Kingdom of Heaven came out in, 2003? So I was already in high school by that point. You know, there's a lot of historical themed films of the 90s in particular, 80s, 90s, that I just really liked. I really, really liked historical media, and that's just kind of shaped my passions. So there was that, and then Age of Empires came out on the PC, and then also PlayStation. So I just had an affinity for history the entire time. And then a lot of cool games came out that I liked about history. So that kind of shaped my interests. And then when it came to researching stuff for school, I just always found historical content more interesting. It was the only subject I was really good at in school. I was kind of a mediocre student. I wasn't really that good at maths or science or anything, as we found out on stream. Yeah, I always liked history, and I found every other subject kind of boring as a result. It was just more interesting to learn about castles and knights and medieval princesses and kingdoms and battles. That's just what interested me as a kid. And so that kind of shaped my entire life. And so growing up in Europe, you are actually quite lucky, because obviously it depends on where you are. When you are a student in Australia, a lot of your history lessons are either just about Australian history or modern history. You know, when you're in Australia, you don't have much history, because a lot of the history that we have is dated from, obviously, the arrival of the settlers, the colonists. So as a result, a lot of Australian students, they learn Australian history, they learn World War I, they learn World War II, and they learn Cold War history. And as a result, they don't really have much historical knowledge outside of that when they get to university. So I was lucky. I grew up in Ireland. I grew up in the UK. So not only am I learning back then the history of my own country, or the country I was living in at the time, because I moved quite a bit, I also got to learn the broader medieval European history as a whole, because obviously if you're in a European country, it's kind of hard to learn your own nation's history without learning about the history of the countries around you, because you are so intertwined and interconnected. Like, for example, did you guys know that during the Irish conflict with the English for independence, well, not I guess independence, but a long, long time ago, in the 1500s, the Irish clans fled in exile to Spain and tried to get the Spanish king to back their fight for independence against the British crown, for example. So there's actually I think it's in Galicia, which is northwest Spain. I think there are like little pockets of Irish diaspora who have probably by this point integrated into Spanish society, obviously. So yeah, that's kind of where my interest in history came from. I just grew up always fascinated with history. Partly because of the media that was around me, because, you know, if you grew up in the 90s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, the historical epic was still like a common thing. I feel like historical epics kind of fell out of vogue. I think the last one was kind of Troy, right? Yes, there's the Odyssey adaptation, but guys, is the Odyssey historical or fiction? Here's a little a pop quiz. It's real. It's fiction. Fiction set in history. True and real. A bit of both. Smart. Yes. So historians don't really have like a conclusive answer for the Odyssey. I think the main theory going forwards is still that it's fictional works on the backdrop of history. Obviously, we don't have mythical monsters existing in real life. Sorry to disappoint. But yeah, there's a lot of Homeric myths, which is normally what we refer to them as. So we normally call them Homeric myths or Homeric stories, because there may be some basis in history, but we just don't know. Also, fun fact, Homer also subject to the same sort of situation as William Shakespeare, where we don't know for certain if Homer was one person or a collection of people. So yeah, there you go. Another sort of little fact, if you're not aware, that's one of the theories about Homer. It might not be one person. It might be multiple people. So yeah, going back to the topic at hand, I grew up in a very fortunate time in which Hollywood and TV in general sort of thought that historical stories were cool, and that just shaped my passion for history. And so I also had some questions about my other interests and how, I guess, masculine, I guess they are. If I may use the term, I am a tomboy or former tomboy. So I grew up sport crazy. I've always been very sporty. I've always been very sort of active. I didn't really have a childhood in that I was a competitive swimmer from a very, very young age, and my parents pushed really hard for me to be a tomboy. For me to be a tomboy, for me to be a competitive swimmer. But yeah, basically, I've just always been very sporty, very active. I was always in swimming teams. I competed from a very young age in competitive swimming. So I think I was competing from about 7 years old onwards. I was entering competitions for swimming. And then when it came to like school, I was also, because I was so fit, I was actually pretty good at football. Grew up in the UK/Ireland, so obviously football is very commonplace. In primary school, I played with all the boys because I went to mixed schools. And so yeah, I've always been very sporty. So I was very sporty. And as a result, when you're always around boys, you kind of pick up on their interests as well, because you're hanging out after football matches or swimming meets. So my uncle was a big drive for me getting into video games. So my uncle gave me my first ever console, which was the Game Boy Brick in, I think it was 1997 or 96, because I got Pokemon Blue and my sister got a Game Boy. You know, she got a regular Game Boy and I got the Game Boy Brick because I was the younger one. And so they were scared that I would drop it and it would break. So I've got the Brick. He also had a Nintendo 64. I didn't have a Nintendo 64 growing up. I had to go visit my uncle to go play it. So I got to experience like Pokemon Stadium in very small chunks. Does it still work? I think so, yes. I think I have fresh batteries in it. One sec, let me go check. Hello. Don't type Barry. Stop it. Bad. Okay, so the batteries weren't working in my Game Boy Color, but I just put some new batteries in, so hopefully this works. No! It's not working! Oh no, I'm heartbroken. Well, that's sad. Maybe I've put them in. No, I definitely put in the batteries right. I guess time comes for us all. This is a Game Boy Color. It's the original purple one. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, my interests. Yeah, so I was always doing sports. I was always very sporty. I did a lot of, I did the swimming competitively. I did the football. I played like casual social football. I played football for school in primary school, and then in high school I was also in the swim teams. So I was just always around the guys of my age. I got into professional wrestling through the football team because a bunch of, 14-year-old boys, what are they going to be into in the, I don't know, when was that? I guess turn of the century. Kind of hurts to talk about. They were into the WWE. Was it even the WWE at that point, or was it the WWF? That's kind of when I got introduced to wrestling, and then I think I got into wrestling proper around this is a bit embarrassing. We all have bad taste when we're younger, but my first wrestling crush was CM Punk, like circa 2006. So that was my look, we all have bad taste when we're younger, okay? Yeah, he is back in WWE. And now he's like in his 40s, and every now I see him, I still like him as a wrestler, but I don't like have any sort of like love in that regard or like a crush on him. It was just like a teenage crush. After a while, my parents did get us a PlayStation 2. I have a silly story from when I was younger. I think it was like 2001 or maybe 2002 for Christmas. I did grow up, I guess, fairly comfortably. So my parents, obviously we had all the presents under the tree, and I was opening presents, and I opened this one present for me, and it was Robot Wars, I think Arenas of Destruction for the PlayStation 2. And very silly little old me was like, OMG, Robot Wars, yay! But I don't have a PlayStation 2, I can't play it. And little did I know that my parents and my nan, I think, went halves on getting me a PlayStation 2 for myself and my sister. And so then I think they do have, that classic picture of like kids opening a present and finding like the NES or the SNES. And they go, whoa, oh my God. And they like freak the heck out. I think there are pictures of me doing that with the PlayStation 2. I think there's some pictures somewhere in the family archives of me losing my shit as a little, oh God, would I have been a teenager? I don't remember how old I was. You were an N64 kid? I never had an N64. My uncle did. So that's how I got to experience N64 games. I was pogging out my gourd. So yeah. There you go. I think that's a little bit of my history. I guess we can talk about history in general. Because we've only got about 15-ish minutes left of the stream. What made you move to Australia? Long story short is that my family got offered a job in Australia on top of I had just finished schooling and we were looking at university. And in terms of like living situation, the UK/Ireland wasn't so good at the time. Bit of like, political stuff going on that I probably shouldn't get into on stream. So, my family just kind of, we had that job offer and we took the leap. And so I moved at the time that I was starting university, essentially. So that's why we ended up in Australia. There you go. No, it wasn't the Troubles. It wasn't the Troubles. Although, if you want to know, I guess if I can talk about my personal history a little bit more. If you're interested in learning about my personal history, I suppose I can. I lived through the Troubles, yes. So a story about my childhood is that we were driving through Northern Ireland, and obviously we were in a car that had a Republic of Ireland license plate. This is about 1995, so it's tail end of the Troubles. And basically we were just driving around down a country road, and then all of a sudden I don't know the correct term, sorry, because I don't know the modern military terms. I guess like a squad or a platoon or a group of British soldiers basically step out of the hedge line, essentially, and flag down our car. Pulled over, and so essentially, and then I think at some point the nearby field, a fucking helicopter comes over and like drops in some more troops as well. And yeah, basically they flagged us down, and we were suspected of being members of I guess the IRA, you know, car driving down a country road, Irish plates, for whatever reason, because you did get checked at the border back in the day. You did get checked, so we had already been through like a checkpoint. And then yeah, they flagged us down, suspicion of, you know, being in the IRA, potentially a car bomb situation. So guns pointed at everyone in the car, asking us information. My dad gets questioned, my mum gets questioned, soldiers pointing guns at us. I would have been, you know, not too old, but you know, I was old enough to remember this, and it was a pretty scary moment. Pretty scary moment to go through and have, you know, grown adults with live ammunition loaded guns, I would assume, pointed at you purely because of being Irish, you know? So we got held up for, I want to say it was like 30 to 45 minutes. We were just going on a holiday. we were just on a holiday. And no, we did not have any car bombs or weapons. We were not drug running. We were not gun running. We were not, you know, doing anything suspicious. We were just wanting to go on a trip as a family. But, you know, the past is the past, and we'll leave it there. Have you tried airsoft? No. I've done paintballing. We had like a paintballing retreat as part of my church growing up. We had a paintballing retreat slash like fun day, which is, I don't know, it's not really like a religious experience really. You're shooting guns at each other. I have a fun story because we had like, there were different themed rounds for the paintball, and one of the themed rounds was a capture the flag type deal where one team was on defense and then the other team was on attack. And so we had like I'll bust out the paint real quick. So it was kind of like an enclave like this. And so the path leaving up, this was like a hill. So team 1 was up here and they were the attackers. And then there was like it was like an open clearing, and then the flag was that. There was the flag. And then team 2, we had a bunch of defensive buildings. And I was in team 2. So we had all these bunkers set up. And then we obviously had like kids all over the place and like little sort of barriers to sort of defend from. And so this was team 2. And so obviously the objective was team 2 defends, team 1 attacks. And if they get the flag, they win. If we hold the flag, we win. And so for some stupid reason, one of the older kids, I guess, volunteered to be an hero. And I'm using the term in that way as well. So he, for some reason, the round started, he runs in by himself. He tells the rest of his team, don't worry guys, I've got this. And he runs in by himself. And so what does team 2 do? But start shooting. And so effectively what happened was, I'm going to say 15 to 20 small children just start mag dumping paintballs into this one kid. And so he looked like a Pollock painting by the end of it. And he just started crying, sobbing out of his eyes because he was just shot to shit. You know, like in those action films where they fall to their knees and then it's like boof, 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 as he gets pummeled with bullets and he just, for some bizarre reason, decides, no, don't worry guys, I'm fast. I'll go get the flag and I'll be back in a jiffy. We shot this kid so much that the teachers had to, well, not the teachers, the head of the paintball arena and all the parents who were on the retreat with us had to scream at us to stop because he was just crying his goddamn eyes out because it obviously hurt, right? That's a lot of it must have been close to like 300 to 400 shots fired at this one kid. And so he was probably like in excruciating pain. And then we all got a good talking to about how that wasn't very nice and how that wasn't very Catholic of us. And we were just playing by the rules. They were the attacker, we were the defender. So we were just going dung 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 dung, just shooting the crap out of him. And he would have been like, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old. And I have been shot. I know it hurts. So we were a little bit sinister, a little bit evil. That was a little bit, you know, a little bit nasty of us. But it was also incredibly funny. And I have this story to talk about, you know, I don't know, 25 years later. And I'm sure he probably also has that story as well. Suffering builds character. Exactly. We're just teaching good Catholic lessons and rhetoric. Yeah, we kind of recreated a firing squad on a child. Like, the worst part was, he didn't even make it to the flag. Like, we shot him down before he even made it to the flag, and then we just kept shooting whilst he was down, which I think might be against the Geneva Conventions. That might be war crimes. We may have committed paintball war crimes, which is a little bit sinister. Yeah. So we are at 2 hours now, guys, and I did say I needed to keep this one a little bit short. So if that's all right, guys, we might end the stream here. Do the eye bags. Do you like your women tired, blushing, and sweaty? Is that how you prefer your women?